Welcome back to the Manor, Entropians. Julian McBain here, and today we are going to be discussing why people act differently to each other in Entropia universe versus other games. And it's if you interact with people in Entropia universe, and then you go into, say, World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, although to a lesser extent, or Guild Wars, or any of the other MMOs, people here actually treat each other much differently in a lot of cases than they do those other games. And I got to thinking about that because that's very strange. You know, most people are, you know, if they're in a game, then they're going to act in a certain way no matter what the game is. And that's why we have a lot of trolls, and that's why we have a lot of people who just focus on the PvE, and there's people who just focus on PvP and things like that. And so I got to thinking about that, and I realized the entire reason that's the case is because it's a real cash economy. And that's very interesting. You know, because real money is involved, people are much more cordial to each other, and we act more like we do in analog society than we do in any other game. Or we're more apt to. Because there are still people out there who are, you know, people you can do business with, and they're trustworthy and everything in real life, but they come into Entropia universe and they're a pirate. But I've noticed that from a broad perspective, it tends to be the case that in Entropia universe, these people are more likely to be cordial and businesslike and friendly, or at least, if not friendly, polite. And that's really good information to have, especially since this game has, you know, it uses real money. And it doesn't mean that the game does not have its share of assholes. You know, you're going to have people who try to scam you. You're going to have people who are just out for themselves. But it is really interesting to see that because real money is involved, a lot of people are going to act as if they did in the real world, especially when dealing with strangers. And I think that's also why Mindark limits us to a single account. Alts are technically against the rules. If you have alts and Mindark finds out, they reserve the right to end your service for everything and ban you permanently. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got way too much time and energy into this game to let my account be deactivated because I was being stupid. And so, because you've got the single avatar, you get a reputation in the game. And you build on that reputation, and as things go, you know, if you're polite and you're kind and you trade well with other players and you do things that are considered acceptable by the social standards that we have in real life, you will be considered a good player to have around, and people will want you to play with them. And if you don't, then you'll be considered an asshole, and no one is going to trade with you, and you'll have to TT everything, and you'll lose the opportunity for markup. Because there's more to life than just, you know, farming loot and selling it and things like that. You have to provide value to someone if they're going to hand you their ped. And one of the values you provide is an interactive experience with you and other players that is considered to be beneficial to the player. And so I think that's why that might be the case. And it's true that, you know, we play this game because we want to escape. At least in some way, shape, or form. We want to escape real life for a little while. We want to do something that scratches that itch to grind ourselves toward a better tomorrow. Which is literally how, you know, real life works. You know, you graduate from school and you get a job, and that job, you have to grind out the skills in order to become better at that job every day. And then as you get better at that job, you make more money. And that's fairly literally what you do in Entropia universe, depending on how you play. And I mean, there's definitely limitations to that, because, you know, Mindark doesn't live in a vacuum. They still have to pay for their lights, and they have to pay for their servers, and they have to pay their staff. And so that's why there's a slow diminishing return on what you earn Or if you go to an OLA, then it's going to be less than that, because we're all... I'm pretty sure that the generalized tax rate of Calypso is around 10%. I think for several planet partners, like I know Monrea... That is a global, ladies and gentlemen, of like 10 ped. 11 ped. 11 ped. That's what I get for hunting curbs. Global of 11 ped. We'll take it. No arguments from me. So anyway. So we've got this simulator of essentially real life if real life was in space. You know, certain aspects have been put in and certain aspects have been removed. So like Mindark has removed death. Like actual permanent death from the equation. That's a pretty good advantage to have, and it allows us to take risks that we would otherwise not be able to do. But to counterbalance that, it means that we end up having a diminishing economic return unless we are extremely smart or highly skilled. And I mean that technically, because if you look at the professions, and there are a lot of professions, what you really need to pay attention to are the primary weapon that you choose to use and the looter skill, or the looter profession of the type of creature that you generally hunt. Everything in this game is optimized towards level 100. At least as far as I can tell. And so what you do is you grind out the skills necessary to bring that piece of your avatar up to level 100. And once you're at level 100, theoretically, you should be doing really well. And I think that's why the best crafters in the game do so well, is because they've taken the time and they've put in the investment, and they've made the sacrifice of all of that in order that they have the high enough skill level that they can make a profit. And of course, the other exception is owning real estate in the game and being a owning the owned land areas, outback land areas out here in Amenthra and on this island here. And that's because instead of trading a huge amount of time, although theoretically it's possible to sweat mobs until you have enough to buy one of those places, but I sure as hell don't want to be the poor sap doing it. You could, in theory, go there and farm the sweat to sell for ped to buy the owned land area. Then once you buy the owned land area, you have to put mobs on it, you have to populate it, and you have to attract players. And all that costs money, but that's a very standard business model. That's pretty much how everything in analog life actually works. Is you invest in some sort of a product or service. Their product or service happens to be a piece of property with which you can hunt, and mobs with which you can hunt on it. And of course minerals in which you can mine. And unlike most products and services you pay for, in their case they get a percentage of what awards you manage to get off of their property. And in the game they call it taxes, but it's really not taxes if you think about it. It's rent. It's rent by percentage, or it's a commission that you pay them for doing all the work. And so I think that's really interesting that, you know, if you sell cars, for example, you might make 10% on a car sale. It's not that much. It's like $100 a car. But still, you might make or here's a better example. If you sell real estate, like in real life, if I remember correctly, the average realtor makes around 3% on the sale of a house. And so, you know, when you're selling a $300,000 piece of property, one sale is $9,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. But one sale is also not going to make your annual pay, unless you're selling some ridiculous houses that are like in the tens of, or like in the millions range, which, you know, that would be amazing, but good luck finding a job doing that right off the block. Conversely, though, here, if you put the money in and you buy the land, and you can say, okay, I'm going to charge you 3% of your winnings come to me for maintaining this property. and then you reinvest and you make sure that it's all, you know, all good, and you advertise so that players come to you, and you have a fairly standard real life business in Entropia universe. And maybe at that point you can actually make your living playing the game with with an avatar that's not level 100 and totally optimized. But the barrier for entry for such a job is really high at like $17,000 US, which is a lot of risk. And so realistically, if you're looking to be, you know, if you're looking to make this be a substitute for real life, then you've got it wrong. But it is a simulation of real life, because we interact with each other as if we were actually here in this world. And that right there is just, it's just amazing to think about. And it's also interesting that, you know, you can't get more culturally diverse than Entropia universe, because we have people from all walks of life, a large number of countries. In this game, I have met people from Sweden, Britain, Australia, France, Russia, Ukraine, Venezuela, Brazil. I'm willing to bet all 50 United States, Canada. Don't know that I've met anyone. No, I did meet someone from Mexico. China. And I think Taiwan. So, and we're all interacting with each other. We're all interacting with each other as if we are a single culture. Because on Calypso, in this game, we are a different culture than the culture of our origin. And so I think that's that right there to me was actually kind of surprising to me. It was an epiphany that it is an epiphany that I'm actually having as I talk, believe it or not, that we have pretty much created our own society and our own culture here, without regard to the socioeconomic basis of the culture we come from. And we play in the roles that we have carved out for ourselves in this virtual society, because that is how we've all agreed to interact with each other. And so what does that mean? Because that's got to mean something. You don't get that in real life. You put 10 people from 10 different places in a room, and I mean, everyone's going to be polite, but they're not going to trust each other. And insofar as I can tell, Entropians trust each other while they're being Entropians, as far as they trust anyone in their own society. And I mean, that's going to be different levels depending on what society you come from, but it doesn't mean that you're going to assume that the person standing next to you is out to kill or rob you, unless you're in a PvP zone. It's just, it's really amazing that we've built something that we can come together like this, and it is so different from what we experience in real life. I do think that MindArc has built something here that we really haven't grasped the depth of the innovation. We haven't grasped just what we have, but I think we're managing to kind of dig into it more. And I think it's far more complex than even I gave it credit for when I started this series. 2 episodes ago I started this series, and just in this, and when I came to the realization that we've built a society in a virtual world that subsumes all assumptions about the analog world we live in, dumps them, and says, okay, we're not American or Canadian or Chinese or Russian or French or British. We're Entropians. And while we're being Entropians, we treat each other like Entropians. That's that's incredible, man. Because if you think about it, you can be in this game playing the game and interacting with someone with whom your country is at war with and never know it. Shout out to Lycia of the Knights of Entropia. Wow, that wasn't even the direction I was planning on going with this particular video, and it just like poof. That's one of the beautiful things about doing think pieces like this, is sometimes when as you're processing through the part that you actually wanted to think about, you come to realizations, and it's really something when it just like smacks you on the head like that. So okay, we treat each other because, you know, we have a real money economy, and oh, whoops, there we go. We do so regardless of other factors, other analog factors. So I guess the question comes down to, you know, how do you make your quote-unquote living in Entropia universe? Because inevitably, if someone's going to gain, someone has to lose, right? And, you know, if you were to say that in real life, I would say no, you just have to be smarter. And know how to make it so that everyone can benefit from what you're doing. And even then, that right there is still entirely possible because, you know, the real world has a limit to the amount of money that it has, and Entropia Universe has a limit to the amount of money that it has. And people are dumping money into it all the time. The difference is that, unlike the real world, Entropia Universe has to lose some of its money every day in order for Mindark to maintain the systems, and that's what happens when you repair weapons. Is I don't remember where I read it, but I think it's in Mindark's Terms of Service. If you actually read the Terms of Service, I think that's where it is. When you use the repair terminal, that money is taken completely out of the system and used to pay Mindark's bills. Oh, you've been hurt, and you're gonna attack me anyway. So I'm just gonna, you know, hope I don't lose this loot. And so, okay, we've got that, and, you know, we're slowly dealing with that, and so people inject money into the game so they can play faster, even though it's not so efficient. That kind of makes up the balance of it so that we're all kind of playing on a level playing field. And then some players own deeds, including me. You can see I've got underground and moon deeds. Oh, they changed the color of the moon deeds. Huh. I think they should have kept this the same color until it was tradable. And then they've just opened their first, you know, their own, whoops, that's land area income, their own stock exchange. Even though it's not technically stock because these aren't securities. And I'm going to have to say that for the next 3 years. These are not securities. This is a game. But they act like them. And the system's specifically designed to act like an exchange. So, there you go. And so, they've really started to build in the elements of a real social framework. We have a social framework, and it's a social framework that we've all agreed to play by. And they've got the architecture of an actual society, of an actual set of colonies in this game. And so, you know, we've built a way in which we can make money, and we have things in the game that we can spend money on, and you can build a business doing things, crafting those items that other people need, or going to mine them, or selling them from the mob loots as you harvest them. And in this way, you create value. And I do think that Mindark kind of shot themselves in the foot by the market value system, but what it does do is it prevents hyperinflation. And for better or worse, it prevents inflation. And I mean, if you go to the economies of like any server in World of Warcraft, and things when they start out are pretty reasonable, but then you're paying like 2 million gold for something stupid. And I think that's why Mindark decided to put the market value system in, because what it does is it prevents prices from becoming so high that players can't afford to even start playing anymore. And so it's a check and balance against a runaway economy. And you can, because they don't control what the markup is, I don't see that as a bad thing. But at the same time, it means that the growth of an item that actually does have a smaller supply is much slower than the supply and demand curve is not as accurate, I don't think. I think that demand, the lack of supply with ample or more than ample demand, means that prices grow to meet the demand too slowly. And I think that's interesting. And I think that messes with the economy, because that's what it would do. But whether or not that would be beneficial or not is really hard to determine. Because again, it makes it so new players can jump into the game, and because it's a game, now having those controls might be beneficial to the game overall. I'm someone who doesn't like controlled markets. I understand the need for regulation, but I don't like controlled markets, and I don't know if that's overall. I don't know if the drawbacks to having that system in place outweighs the benefits that it provides. But I think that's like a whole nother discussion. I could go for hours on economics and the balance. And so we're not going to really dig into that much today. That might be my next video. So, okay, we're going to kill this mob, and then we're going to head back. I do want to let you know, off the topic of the think pieces, I am contemplating, I've got a Patreon that I set up like a million years ago that has nothing in it. I am contemplating actually making it go live. But I need to know what kind of value I can provide, because if you guys are going to be, providing payment, I need to be able to provide value, because nobody who provides no value deserves any form of payment. And so I need to be able to provide value that's worth being paid for. And so I would be curious as to what kind of content, if I were to set up a Patreon, what kind of content would you want to see on it? So that's what I got. And I was only going to kill that one mob. I don't know why I decided I needed to kill this one too, but okay, that works. Did I? Okay, good. Oh, by the way, if you were around when things went haywire, check your claim rewards to make sure that you have all of the ones you've earned. Let's drop Sleipnir and head on back. I really hope you guys are liking these think pieces. If my metrics are to be believed, then the answer is yes, because I've seen a lot of subscriptions in the last week or two since I've really started doing these think pieces. But let me know, because I mean, they could be subscribing because of older content, and I will never know. So yeah. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We're on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time. So make sure you sub. What the hell? It's Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal, or it's It from It. I would prefer Sweet Tooth, because Sweet Tooth is only slightly less creepy than the clown from It. I don't like clowns. Anyway. We're on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Guys, I really appreciate all the support. You all have a wonderful day.